Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. In this lecture, we're going to be dealing with a request method of POST. So we're going to be sending a book as a request, and then we're going to be processing that on the server, which is our Books2 program. And then we're going to be responding back to the client with a response of the book. So this is an awesome opportunity where we can deal with the requesting and the responsing between a client and server. So let's dive in. I'm going to start by clicking enter a few times so we can get extra space on our IDE. And the first thing we want to do is to create an @app decorator of post that's going to be an empty URL. And now right under the decorator, we're going to create a new function called async def create book. And as the parameter, we're going to pass in an object. So I'm going to say book of type book. And now immediately, FastAPI is going to know that this is not a query parameter like we were using before. Since we're dealing with a base model object, FastAPI is going to be expecting this in the body of the API request. Once we get the book, we're going to want to say books.append book. So we're going to add this book to the list of empty books that we currently have. And now simply we want to return the book. So if we successfully append the book, then we just want to return the book back to the user so they can see what was processed and see the 200 successful status code along with the book that was successfully added. All right, now let's save our application and let's open up our browser. I'm going to refresh our page and we can see that we have this read all books that we currently had already and a new API called create book. Now we can see that a request body is required. We need to send in a request body along with this API URL to be able to successfully process this application. And right underneath, it tells us an example of what the request body should look like. We're going to need an ID, which is a random UUID. We're going to need a title, which is a string, an author, which is a string, a description, which is a string, and a rating that is an integer. So let's say try it out. So when you say try it out, we get this text box where we are able to enhance and change the request body. So the UUID, we will keep the same. This is going to be the identifier we're going to be using as a primary key of the book object that we're creating. I'm going to call the title Computer Science Pro. By Coding with Roby. And for the description, I'm going to say how to become the best developer. And I'm going to give it a rating of 100. And now I'm going to execute this API request. Now let's look at this curl request. We can see that it's a post with our URL and our path parameters, which is going to be completely empty. We have two headers, which is application JSON. And then we have inside this /d, we have the request body. And again, we have our ID, which is a unique identifier. We have our title, Computer Science Pro, our author, Coding with Roby, our description, how to become the best developer with a rating of 100. And then as a response body, we get the exact same information with a status code of 200. If we scroll back to the top and say read all books and say try it out and execute, we can see that now within books, we have one book with the ID, title, author, description, rating that we created. Now let's go back down to our post. Now let's eliminate an entire section that's required, like author. And now we wanted to say execute. We can see that we get a 422 status code error with unprocessable entity. We get an object of detail which is body and author with message of field required, value error missing. So what's happening is we are missing a line of our object that is required, but FastAPI during this validation process using Pydantic, it automatically looks up each one of these required fields and validates it against the request to make sure that the client is sending in all the correct information to properly process this API. This is super powerful stuff that FastAPI does automatically for you. Let's now go back to Swagger and let's add in that author that's currently missing. And instead of a string, let's make author equal to an integer. If we execute this, we can see that FastAPI automatically turns that integer into a string because that's exactly what we were looking for author. We needed author to be a string, so FastAPI again does data validation to turn this integer into a string during the parsing of the book object. This wraps up how we're going to create a post request method using a request body of book, and I will see you in the next video.